happened. The main thing of what happened, the towers didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground. They turned into dust in midair. How do we know that? Wait, does that look like a collapse to you? We were told it was a collapse. We were basically brainwashed into reacting to this picture, like flashcards. Memorize the word collapse when you see this. But that's not a collapse. If they had hit the ground, if they'd slammed into the ground, there would be over 1 million tons of debris piled up on the ground. But that didn't happen. If they had slammed to the ground, Manhattan would have been flooded because the bathtub, which holds out the Hudson River, would have been ruptured. We'll talk about the bathtub a little bit more. That didn't happen. And if they'd slammed to the ground, the seismic readings would have recorded 2 500,000-ton buildings slamming to the ground, plus a 230,000-ton building slamming to the ground. And that didn't happen. So we first are going to determine what happened by looking at these 3 main areas, and then there's a whole host of other areas we'll look at as well. So here we have what was left after the towers went away. Only buildings with a WTC prefix were destroyed that day. Really, hardly anything else was even scratched. A few damaging things here and there, but nothing catastrophic that couldn't be repaired. That's all that was left of the North Tower. North wall, the south wall, and a little bit of stairwell B. Now the towers were steel structures with aluminum cladding on the outside. Well, you see a few pieces of aluminum cladding laying around. Yeah, you get a steel piece there. But right in front of the front door, why don't you have piles of steel structure? And there's this ambulance in pretty much pristine condition. Maybe the door got done a little bit, but I don't see any big piece of steel clobbering the top of it. And we know the park ambulance is at ground level, not up in space. So that's ground level. Here's a newscast from the 24 hours later.
Down in Lower Manhattan today, George. I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd as we look at these areas down below and the video of where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
What was that he said? Fell down to the ground, was pulverized, and evaporated. I don't mean to be making fun of these people at all. They're trying to explain what they see. They don't see enough debris. And they're trying to come up with some explanation as to where the building went. Actually, that video clip I saw that day, and that partially inspired the title of the book. Because why did people quit asking that question? Here's another short clip the following day.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust as a consequence of that building collapse. I think it was striking.
People were shocked. It did not make sense how much it was turned to dust. The top view of what was left. We have Building 3 here, Tower 1, Tower 2. Building 6, it had all these cylindrical cutouts in it. Approximately the middle 50% of that building's missing. Building 5 had cylindrical cutouts in it. Some circular cutouts there. Building 7 went missing. The buildings on either side weren't really destroyed much. There's some stab wounds, I call it, some pieces of steel beam that went into this building, but essentially nothing happened to this building. The sidewalk in front of it didn't even get covered. And Building 4, that's when it often gets forgotten. The north wing of it seemed to be sliced off like with an X-Acto knife, and the main body of the building just went missing. Just the north wing stayed, or that part of the north wing. Here's that remaining stub of the north wing of Building 4, and looking at it directly on, here's what you would see. If you looked out of through the building across the street with binoculars, looked in, you could probably see what was left on someone's desk in there. Come to think of it, it reminded me of an image I saw as a child when my family drove through Topeka, Kansas the morning after that horrendous tornado that tore up a large part of Topeka, Kansas. I remember seeing this apartment building, it was probably a dorm, but to a child it was an apartment building, sliced in two. Half of it was just gone, and the other half, like nothing happened. The bed was still made, magazines on the bedspread, some books on the dresser, and clothes hanging in the closet that did not look disturbed. No support under that floor, so I really don't think somebody walked in there and made the bed. It was just unsupported hanging there. And it also might remind you of the Pentagon. It's a clean slice. From ground level, here's what it looked like that day. There's just this little corner left. And after they cleaned up the corner, there's that sliced off part of the north wing. So here's what was left, this elevation map, but there's what should have been there, that ghost pattern. And if you notice, there's a little pimple down there at the bottom of Building 3. 14 folks survived down there. The rest of the building went away, and who was left in that little corner there survived. Also, the bottom of Tower 1, that little hump there, that was Stairwell B. 14 people survived there as well. And one of them, when they came out, said this. I looked and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. These are the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk or one chair or one phone, nothing. Another one talked about walking out onto an empty football field. Something I've often talked about is toilets. There should be at least 3,000 toilets in those buildings. Busted up toilets are easy to recognize. Recognizable parts. So you have all this gray dust, you should have some nice shiny sections of porcelain, assuming that is what they used. But you didn't see any. Not one bit. Again, here's the cutout part of Building 6 and those other cylindrical holes. We're going to concentrate on the main body of Building 4 for a minute, because it's fascinating the way it just went missing. Here's an actual photograph of that area. There's that tiny little corner, but the rest of it just went missing. There's a Burger King across the street. They were still flipping burgers over there, feeding the firefighters.